Mick Mulvaney joins us right now, the White House budget director. The backdrop for today's speech was a sudden backup in the stock market today, a big fall off about 363 points. A worst day we've seen in about 7 months here. Futures are rebounding a little bit here. Obviously, though, stepping back from the sell-off here, the markets are up appreciably since the president's inauguration, dating back to his election. So, Director Mulvaney, and very good to have you, sir. Thanks for taking the time.
Neil, thanks. It's good to be here.
I had colleagues on both sides of the aisle today talking to me, sir, about, well, don't stress the markets too much. You never know. Anything could happen. What do you say?
I think the markets go up and down on a daily basis, but over the course of time, that you've seen that this market has only headed in one direction since the president took over. Yeah, we lost 260 points today, but I think we did about the same back in May, and no one remembers that now because it's been so solid since then. So, yes, there's going to be short-term decreases in the markets. That's the way they work.
Yeah.
But we think we really have made fundamental changes to the American economy in terms of what we've done with taxes, what we've done with deregulation, that are going to have long-term positive impacts to the markets, to the ability for most folks to make money, for corporations to do well, for people to do well. And that's what you'll hear about tonight from the president.
And, Director, just to be clear, I mean, it's 100 points here and there, 363 points southward today. But you're quite right. The markets have appreciated quite a bit under this president. Ironically, the one thing that's getting in his way, and it could be a good thing, but higher interest rates in reflection of an improving economy. You worry about that when you crunch the numbers and have to factor in the cost of a lot of stuff with higher rates?
Well, certainly the cost of money, which is what interest is what's most concerning to me in my role as the director of the Office of Management and Budget, because as our borrowing costs go up, and you're sitting on $20 trillion in debt, you can do the math. It's pretty simple. It gets really expensive to sit on that much debt for a long period of time when interest rates go up. That being said, I would be much more concerned if interest rates were being driven up by exogenous shocks to the system, something happening outside of the country or outside of the economy. If they're going up because the economy is doing well, that's the sort of good news that we can deal with.
You know, Director, much has been made of these tax cuts and all. I've had a number of Democrats on. Steny Hoyer says, well, you know, they're not paid for, which is a little odd considering the concern for building up debt didn't seem that appreciable prior. But leaving that aside, are you surprised, because we touched on it before, about all these companies that one after another, several more today, that are indicating because of the tax cuts, they're sharing the bounty with their workers. Now, Nancy Pelosi comes along, calls that chump change, calls it rather measly in the scheme of things, and that they could give a lot more. What do you say to that?
Yeah, I'd love to be able to tell you that we knew that was going to happen, but I think, to be perfectly honest with you, I think that surprised even us, that it was that quick and that large, and that's great news. As to Mrs. Pelosi's comments, I would love for somebody to ask her if she thought it would be chump change, I think her words were crumbs, if this was a government check that was going out. And my guess is if there was a $1,000 check going out to families under a Democrat administration, she would be the first to crow about it. She's not upset about the amount of money. She's upset about why the money is flowing as it is and where it's coming from. It's coming from the private sector and not from the government. This undermines a basic Democrat progressive principle. They don't know what to do with it. Capitalism works, and they really struggle with that. And that's why I think you see Pelosi grasping at these bizarre references to crumbs when you're talking about thousands of dollars for American families.
You know, a lot of people have talked about paying for the tax cuts. They ignore paying for the other $10 trillion in spending that's added on in the course of that. But leaving that aside, is it your sense, and you crunch the numbers better than anyone, that when this corporate largesse is considered and all the way it's being paid forward by one company after another, that these could be paid for sooner rather than later?
Yeah, in fact, if you go back to the analysis that the Council of Economic Advisors had done in the run-up to the tax bill, and they said, look, we think this is going to translate into a $4,000 per household gain. You get $1,000 in the first 30 days. That's a pretty big chunk of that. So we're very cautiously optimistic that we have under-promised and we hope to over-deliver the long-term benefits to the American economy. Again, when we talked during the tax bill about 1% additional growth every single year, leading to $2.5 trillion in additional revenues, the real number is actually 3.26. You can imagine that. A 1% increase in GDP over 10 years is $3.26 trillion trillion of additional revenues to the government, savings to the Treasury over the course of that 10-year window. That's tremendous potential we can unleash, and we think we've taken some big steps towards unleashing with our tax plan and our deregulation policies.
Yeah, because it doesn't factor in, as you said early on, what these corporations are doing. Switching gears a little bit, the president is supposed to touch director on infrastructure. Now, I know back in your days in Congress as a member of the Freedom Caucus on watching every penny, you might have looked askance at something that calls for $200 billion worth of federal money commitment up front. I don't know where that is going to come from. I know that it's supposed to be leveraged off for private enterprise and all to kick in and help out. But a lot of your more conservative colleagues on the Hill from your days working there are saying, wait a minute, this has potential boondoggle written all over it. What do you say to them?
Sure, and if it was $200 billion of spending for $200 billion of infrastructure, that raises a giant red flag for me. But I think what you're going to hear the president talk about tonight, and what you'll hear more about in the coming days as we sort of add flesh to the bones of this infrastructure idea, is taking that $200 billion, which was in my budget last year, will be in the budget again this year, and leveraging that to $1 trillion, $1.5 trillion, $1.7 trillion, through some very creative financing. Give the president credit. Bringing people in from the private sector has really given us insights into leveraging government dollars that we've not seen before. You're going to see some of the most creative financing tools you've ever seen from the federal government. So, yeah, listen, I get it. I'm concerned about the deficit. I hope that that's my job. That's the reason the president put me here. But you tell me I can spend $200 billion worth of government funds and get 1.5 or 1.7 or 1.8 worth of new infrastructure, that gets my attention.
That is if you get others on board to use that leverage, right?
It is, but I mean, the other countries do it. I know everybody's going to say, oh, you guys, all you want to do is gut the environmental protections and you want to build roads in swamps and so forth. But we can point and will point to examples. Canada, for instance, Australia, more restrictive environmental rules than we have, but they can get stuff built in 2 years where it takes us 10. We do not have to lower our standards. All we have to do is be smarter. And if we do that, not only do we leverage up the new money, but we get a chance to take the money that's already out there and put it on the ground faster. So again, it's going to be a comprehensive immigration plan. You'll know more about it in the next couple of nights, next couple of weeks, and some more of it tonight. I'm sorry, but Tim Ryan's in the background yelling on another channel. So
I hate when that happens. Real quickly, now, are you open to a higher federal gas tax?
I'm sorry, say that again, would you please?
Are you open to a higher federal gas tax, an increase in the federal gas tax?
Yeah, I don't think you're going to see that as part of our proposal.
Really? Okay. Well, that's short and sweet. Thank you very, very much, Secretary. Very good seeing the White House Budget Director joining us from the Capitol.